How many times have you talked too much about yourself with someone? And how many times has this left you feeling empty? And again, how many times have you discovered that the things you told ruined your plans or were used to hurt you? Nowadays, there is a lot of talk about how to preserve privacy, but in the end, it is we ourselves who annihilate our private sphere, telling details of our lives that should remain locked in a safe like precious stones. In this video, thanks to the Zen story you are about to hear, you will learn 10 things that you should not tell anyone if you want to preserve not so much your privacy, but your inner peace. So stay until the end, because the information you will have will allow you, if you really want it, to save yourself from toxic people and negative situations that can influence your destiny. But before continuing, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share the video. Thanks to these small gestures, which cost you nothing, you will help us produce valuable content every day for your spiritual growth. In a Buddhist monastery, located in a remote mountainous region of Japan, the wise monk Koshiro gathered a group of disciples to teach them the importance of not talking too much about themselves to others. How much attention do we pay to protecting our private sphere? Koshiro asked rhetorically, whose penetrating and apparently stern gaze searched the eyes of his listeners. Do we strive to protect the beauty of our interiority? Or do we often break down the walls that surround and protect our secret garden? Today, I will tell you 10 things that, according to Buddhist wisdom and common sense, you should never tell anyone, the monk said. But first, let me make an important premise. Many people are unable to contain the unstoppable flow of words that flow through them. Too often, out of a need to vent or find someone who will show empathy in others, they give in to providing unsolicited information. And in this way, they reveal details about important and delicate topics in their lives, relying on a trust that only very few deserve. Remember that sharing too much of yourself with others often leads to envy, jealousy, and frustration, because not everyone is willing to celebrate the success of others, nor to sincerely rejoice in their happiness, in the goals they have achieved. In certain circumstances, confessing something extremely personal to a person who is not particularly intimate can leave a feeling of emptiness, of exposure, almost of discomfort. Likewise, telling too much about yourself can lead to numerous and sometimes difficult criticisms. Reflecting on these dynamics invites us to carefully consider the words we choose to share. Each communication, each word emitted from our mouth, transmits judgments and opinions that reveal the deepest aspects of our personality. Let us always remember to develop some self-criticism, so that we reflect carefully on the speed with which our tongue moves in relation to our thoughts. Perhaps if we were more aware of the power of our words in shaping our identity, we would be more cautious about letting our tongue run wild without proper discernment. After this intense introduction, the disciples who came to listen to Koshiro remained silent, shocked by the wisdom they had just heard. And when Master began to list the 10 things they should not talk about with anyone, they began to reflect on all the times they had talked too much about themselves. Never tell your plans and goals, Koshiro urged, introducing the first point. Don't do this because talking ahead of time about what we want to achieve can weaken the strength of the seeds we have planted, making them vulnerable to outside influences. To better understand the concept, the monk told the story of a promising businessman who, by prematurely telling the details of his projects, led some of his competitors to copy him, frustrating his efforts. What happens when we tell our personal facts to others? Koshiro asked, inviting the disciples to reflect on the second point he would speak about. We run the risk of breaking the inner balance, that delicate harmony formed by ideas, images, sensations, and projects in constant change. Do not talk about your private life, the monk warned. The words you speak about the most intimate details of your existence can create envy, jealousy, gossip, and external judgments that will end up weakening your energy. The third thing you should not talk about with anyone is the charity we do. Never tell others about your acts of charity, Koshiro decisively stressed, explaining how humility in giving for the common good can be lost in pride if it is revealed too soon. I know very good people who, having revealed their charitable gestures without preserving the purity of their altruism, ended up being misunderstood or criticized. Another thing you absolutely should not talk to anyone about, Koshiro continued, is money issues. Remember that your financial situation can be overwhelmed by the greed or envy of others. I remember a friend who, after revealing his financial successes, had to deal with the negative attitudes of many people, not to mention someone's attempts to ruin what he had built. Never bragging about your acts of heroism was another point Koshiro focused on, highlighting how personal glory can obscure the true meaning of an altruistic act. A few years ago, a monk at the monastery saved the life of a young pilgrim, Koshiro said. The media, upon learning of the event, attempted to interview him, but he avoided doing so and preserved his modesty, embodying the true spirit of heroism. Do not talk about your spiritual path and your religious ideas, the monk continued, explaining how spirituality can be misunderstood or ridiculed if exposed recklessly. If you want your soul to flourish and inner peace to be part of your days, he added, make sure this sphere of your life remains yours alone. The seventh thing you should not talk about with anyone, according to the master, is family problems. Don't talk about your family problems, Koshiro said, emphasizing that domestic matters are fragile and need respect. If you talk about the most intimate matters of your family, it is almost certain that you will end up regretting it, because you will receive unwanted judgments and you will put into the mouths of inappropriate people details that do not concern only you. Never talk about others except in their presence, the monk admonished, adding another item to his list of things not to say. Talking about someone who is not present means disrespecting that person, exposing them to public ridicule. Also remember, anyone who talks about someone who is not present will do the same to you. And would you like someone to tell your secrets to people who don't deserve your trust? Another thing you should never talk about with others, according to the old monk, are your political ideas. My dears, Koshiro said, unless you are involved in politics, do not trust your political beliefs to anyone. In fact, differences of opinion can undermine peace within the community in which we live, especially when we talk about politics. I know people who, by clashing over political issues, have ruined decades-long friendships. While the disciples continued to listen to the lesson with great attention, the wise teacher continued, never talk about your problems or weaknesses, since informing others of your vulnerability is equivalent to forming an army ready to attack you at the first opportunity. I've known friends who, after talking to the wrong people about their weaknesses, found themselves stabbed in the back at the first misunderstanding. You know that phrase we often hear in movies? Koshiro asked, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. Here, he added, avoid revealing your secrets and your weaknesses, because someone, sooner or later, could use them to do you a lot of harm. In the silence of the monastery, illuminated by the soft light of candles, the disciples reflected deeply on the precious lessons of the wise monk Koshiro. But what does this journey teach us and transmit to us through the awareness of talking too much about oneself? That communication and the use we make of it is extremely important in our lives. Our language, in fact, can shape our internal and external reality, and we must always remember that every word we speak is like a seed thrown on another's soil. If we talk too much about ourselves, we run the risk of seeing our inner garden invaded by external influences, losing the delicate beauty of our unique essence. From this story, we also learn that silence is not empty, but rather a fertile space where deep thoughts and feelings can germinate. A place where we can protect the things and people we care about, as well as ourselves. The secret, therefore, is to learn to guard the treasure of our being without dissolving it too soon in words. Silence is not just the lack of sounds, but a refuge where words take shape with wisdom, where meaning is cultivated before being shared. The moral that we can draw from this teaching is that the value of confidentiality and of speaking reflectively lies in the possibility of cultivating sincere and deep relationships. Not sharing every detail of our lives allows us to protect trust and sensitivity in human interactions. Remember that your life is a secret garden, and choosing which flowers to show the world is an act of deep consciousness. Let us then learn the art of confidentiality, to know the power of our words, and to use silence as a treasure. Let your inner garden bloom delicately, because in that silence you will find the strength and wisdom that only privacy can offer.